So, welcome everybody. Let me start off by saying thank you very much for having me here. I'm very humbled. I started out in this community 4 years ago. And now if I look into this room, I see lots of LabVIEW friends that I've made. So thank you very much. And again, thanks for having me. Not that you had any say in that, actually. So. Okay. My name is Joerg Hampel. It's a German name, and it has come to my attention recently that English-speaking people got their problems with that. So this is the IPA notation. Who can read that, actually? Doesn't help either. So this is the best that I came up with. It's like Joerg. Okay, perfect. Who was that? Oh, Jorge, for the Spanish population. Okay, so for the sake of this presentation, where I'll be talking about our processes, I want to introduce our team or my company so that you get a scope for why it is that we're working, how we're working. So we're 2 people, and half of our revenue is project business where we deliver solutions, where our customers tend to not care how they are made, which language they are made in. And the other half is working with customers together with them in their teams, creating LabVIEW software together with them, helping them create better LabVIEW software, which is our slogan. Mostly they are engineers tasked with doing something not software, so there are no experts in software, and that's where we brought in. But that's quite enough about us. Let's change to the Our Giants Are Female slide. I picked Erna Schneider-Hoover. She was born in 1926 in New Jersey to a teacher and a dentist, and rumor has it that she read Marie Curie's biography, which made her choose a scientific profession. And she studied various things, nothing technical actually, because I do think that it was harder for women back then to go into the sciences, in the technical sciences. But then she ended up at Dell Laboratories, and she did earn one of the very first software patents ever issued for a, as I wrote it here, revolutionized modern communication method for telephone switching systems. And what she did was not, it really was very simple. She did identify processes, and those computer systems that were routing these telephone calls had, as you can imagine, very simple processes, so they had not a lot of calculation power. So she did identify processes and then give them priorities, which would mean if they were inundated with telephone calls, other processes that were not so important would just be kept back, so that the system can handle the large load of telephone calls, and if the load goes down again, they would then pick up the low priority processes. So execute accordingly. So that's what she did, and I think that this was fitting very nicely in my presentation. And I did want to pick somebody who was like at the start of women in technology, so kudos to her for doing that. She did come up with this system while she was in hospital giving birth to her 3rd child, which is quite a feat, I think.
Was that the 3rd child in a row? A really big one.
And we were talking about whether it was while she was giving birth or while she was in hospital, so I don't know that. Yeah, so kudos to her. Coming back to my presentation, it's titled How to Blow Your LabVIEW Project in Surprisingly Few Steps. This will be kind of a code review publicly, but not only that I'm not showing code, but I'm showing how we go about things. And there is a big, fat, huge disclaimer, because this is only how we do things. And I'm fairly sure that other people have other ways of doing things, perhaps ways that fit those people better. But we've been having success with how we go about things. We are having happy customers, so we must be doing some things right at least. And what I'm going to talk about today is really not a polished how we should do things version of our processes, but I'm going to strip down and just talk about what we do, what works good for us and what works badly. What works bad. And I do hope to get some feedback from you people, because I want this to be not a lecture but a discussion, so that everybody takes away something. And coming back to what I said earlier, we're working with our customers together. Mostly these are not highly trained software engineers. Mostly these are small teams from 2 to 5 people, and they have their say in how we do things. So, of course, who pays decides. So if they say we do it this way, we can advise or we can advocate or try to like steer them, but they pay, so they say what we do and how we do things. So it's not that we get to pick each and every decision, each and every process, each and every technology. So yeah, as I said, academic ways very often do not work for us because our customers can't deal with those. So we're always into looking for pragmatic ways for ourselves, because as I said, we're a small company. And also for our customers, because mostly we're small teams, we're working very closely together, very personally together. So it's very important for us, it's imperative for us that we have a good relationship. That's how we do our business. And so we need to like take care of each other and see that we come to the end together. And that's why we're looking for pragmatic ways, for also agile ways. And to quote the Agile Manifesto, the very first sentence I think is, I'm going to read it off, we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. And this is really at the heart of what we do. So, before we start with all those nifty steps to blow your project, would everybody who is kind of dealing with the business side of things raise his or her hand? Okay. So would now everybody who does not care a bit about the business side of things raise his hand? Okay.
There's overlap on those groups.
Yeah. So I think even if you don't care about the business side of things, still the technical side of project management has a huge overlap between the two disciplines, because if the project goes nicely in a technical way, the probability is very high that you're going to have a happy customer so that you can send your invoice, which is what I'm interested in as a business owner. So what would you say, what does constitute a successful project? Anybody? Anybody?
Happy customer.
Bueller?
Happy customer.
Happy customer, okay. How do you get to have a happy customer?
You deliver what you say you're going to deliver.
Okay.
Ideally, when you say you're going to deliver it.
So there was 3 things, I think, in one sentence from Steve. We got on time, on budget, and we got the feature parity, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
You can try to surprise them a little bit with a nice UI or something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Nice to have.
So quality, perhaps? What do we want to call it? The quality of what you deliver?
How about making your customers successful?
Ah, you're one step ahead. So please retract it.
Well, I mean, if you design exactly what they want, but it doesn't solve their problem, then
It's not what they need.
yes, exactly.
Okay. So what Sam said, if we don't solve the problem of the customer, maybe the project could be successful, but for what? Is that what you were saying? Okay. So while I was Googling the internet for like material for my presentation, I came to this pyramid, which is not fairly self-explanatory, but I found the message very interesting, because mostly if we're talking about project management, this is what we're talking about. Technically, the budget, the time, the features. But what about the thing why we're even starting writing software, doing projects? The thing that the customer wants to do, what he perhaps even doesn't know himself or cannot really put into words. So mostly our focus covers the blue area, not so much the green one, unless we're involved ourselves into a product, into a solution. So I found that very interesting. And I also have a very nice example of a project gone wrong or not. Who does not know the Opera House in Sydney? Okay, so everybody knows that. So it was built in 1957, and they were planning on spending 7 million Australian dollars and building it within 5 years of time. And very much like in Germany with the recent building projects, it turned out that it cost $110 million and took 13 years. So was that a successful project? Yes, why? How can it be?
It's an iconic building.
Exactly. Who would today say, do not build the Opera House? Nobody would say that, because millions and hundreds of millions of tourists have paid for it over and over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, that depends on your perspective. I mean, if you're
Exactly.
the guy paying the contractors and it's a fixed price, it's extremely unsuccessful.
But it created value.
Not to the guy.
Very much so. So 3 comments, all of them very much true. For the contractors who went bankrupt back then, I don't think it was a successful project. For Australia, now looking back after half a century, it was extremely successful. So where does that lead us? I think it's a question of perspective. And who defines the perspective? Who defines where we stand, where we look at a project? The customer?
The customer's customer.
Okay. So could it be that if you have one project with one outcome, like 110 million and 13 years, the different parties would evaluate this project differently? I guess so. So even if I think my project was successful because I could send my invoice and I got my money, the customer could be like, screw those guys, I'm never going to work with them again because I didn't get what I wanted. Or the other way around, the customer is extremely happy, but we had to spend 3 times the work that we planned on doing. We would say, no, we don't want to work with that customer again, right? So, yeah, Shay.
Yeah, but it depends on your relationship with customer. I mean, if you have a good relationship, you can go to the customer and say, hey, based on the knowledge we have now, it's we are not going to do it on time or on budget because you need also this and that. And if you have a good relationship, then you can like match it really. Not necessarily, or even with a fixed price contract, you can say, hey guys, I mean, we can deliver what you specified at the beginning, but it's not what you really want or what you really need.
Fab?
I was going to say that the thing that's missing in there, the thing that's missing on the create value is the relationship and communication. We won bids in the past where we were the most expensive bid, but the customer still went with us just because they know we're responsive. And they actually told us that. It's like the fact that, you know, you respond to emails and you know how to communicate with them when the scope changes or when some of those things need to change. I don't know where you would put relationship. I almost feel like it has to be like a column that goes from the bottom to
I
the
think it
way
would have
top
to be
of.
a pyramid, so add another dimension perhaps, because this is very two-dimensional or one-dimensional. It's only looking at the project itself. So, but definitely true, both things that you said. So,
Where I said the sentence where you deliver what you say you're going to deliver when you say you're going to deliver, notice the customer didn't come into that sentence at all. That's the difference, is your job is to look at what the customer wants and then tell them what you're going to give them. And then they have to say, oh yes, we're going to get that. That's what I want. I'll pay you the money to deliver it. But at no point in time do you say, I'm going to deliver it when you say, when the customer requires it, because you can only, that's a fictional thing. You can only deliver it when you can deliver it. That's down to you. You know, so I've seen so many failed projects where people say, well, the customer wants it in 2 weeks, so I have to do, you know, I've signed up. But we never do that. We say it's going to take 4 months. It's 4 months of work. You can't fit it in 2 weeks.
yeah.
So the customer requirement is a negotiable thing.
Okay, so this is really going too well actually. So this is not tweaked. All of these like comments were not scripted before, but it really, Honestly, but it all leads to the first rule of the Fight Club, I want to say, the first rule of a blown LabVIEW project. Do not talk to your customer. So everything you guys have said right now leads to this conclusion. If you want your LabVIEW project to just fail, do not talk to your customer, right? And that's what we try to avoid, obviously. So I took this from the Agile Warrior website. That's from the guy who wrote the Agile Samurai book. And I think this one is taken from the Agile Inception deck, which Paul talked about. And it really shows nicely what we were talking about right now, because 3 people think they're in agreement. They all have their own thoughts. But imagine, oh, actually, there was a way to like say the same thing but mean something different. So, of course, what you want to try to do is like talk it through with the customer, look at the different ways of defining it, of solving it, of finding a common target. And even the picture is nice, because I think that this looks like a round solution, right? It's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's like the best combination of what everybody wanted. So this is what we try to do. And for our small teams and our not so trained customers, this is how we do it. We just stand in front of a whiteboard, we talk things through. This is something that doesn't convey too much information about the customer, so this is just a Git flow scheme. But the idea of it is that we stand together in front of something and we talk and we draw and we erase and we draw again until we reach something where we have the same understanding and where we think this is what the customer wants and this is what we can give him actually. So we're in agreement. So, when you're at this point in the project, what would be the next thing to do? Thinking as a business owner even. So you need to start. Okay, and skip this waiting. Start writing down something, right? Because you need to have a base for like coming up with a price, letting the customer know what it is exactly that you want to do for him. Scope of the project, what is in it, what is not in it. So whatever you do, do not write down your requirements if you want it to fail. Again, pragmatically is that we take whatever we came up with together with the customer and there you go, too fast. We try to like put the picture into words and give it names and try to like speak sentences, as we heard earlier today or yesterday. Like if you can put it into a sentence, if you can speak it out, probably is a good thing. If you have even a hard time like formulating it, maybe it's there's something still that needs to be ironed out. So we come up with what we call components. It's tricky to find a term that does not have a meaning on its own. So I know a component within the software realm is something, but this is really just that we want to say this is one thing, and the other thing is another thing. So they are not connected initially. So this is why we chose the word component. There's also the German word Komponente, and that's just the name we gave it. So it's not a software term, it's just one thing. And the second thing that we do is we try to write that down into a spreadsheet. So this is our template. I took one of our customers and just tried to erase everything that's customer specific. And it's in German, so you guys don't understand it. So not too big of a risk, I think. So what we have.
That's a demonstration, I've got that bit.
You get a golden star.
The education system wins again.
So it's 2-0, right? For UK? Okay. Okay. So this is just one of very many ways to write things down. I mean, there are different software products, there are different spreadsheet templates and stuff. This is just helping us to get our thinking straight.
So how many requirements do you think you get on the first pass on a project that you will do fixed price?
Can you repeat into the microphone?
So how many requirements do you think you get on a first pass where you would give a fixed price quote as a percentage of the...
So you mean how many I can write down?
Well, there's a borderline, isn't there? So if a customer gives you a photo of a piece of test equipment and says, can you do me a system? Well, I'm not going to do that for fixed price. So there's a boundary that's sort of at the point in time in my company that we go through the risk, but we know we haven't got all the requirements because that's just impossible. So I wonder what point the different companies will go, because I reckon bigger companies go for more and more and more because you just can't take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering what your boundary is,
yeah,
and see if it's similar to mine.
I think we get a very high percentage, but that's because we are talking very much, we are very close with our customers. So I think 80% of the time we're doing this while we're working on one project, already discussing the next one. So it might be that we're spending 2 days on like finding out what they want, which will then be factored into the first invoice or not, depending on what I decide.
If you were confident you had 70% of the requirements, is that your trigger for a fixed price? Do you think you go, that's enough, we'll do a fixed price and a bit of contingency?
I would say more. I would say 80%. If I'm not feeling like I have like 80 or even more.
I think 80 is about.
Knowing
80 is about a number, I think.
Yeah, knowing that there will be changes, because that's okay and that we embrace them. But I think you need to have the feeling that you get the most out of the customer, that he's able to share at that point in time, because he doesn't know it himself or herself. So a lot of the times we're working on projects where there are some devices still under development. So the customer can't give us 100% of the requirements, but it's okay, and he knows it. So the thing is to put like not, and to put like what we don't know yet in there. And if we don't know it yet, we can write down if we can find this out, who can find it out, if we cannot find it out, if we don't want to find it out or whatever. So whatever it is that you know, you just need to write it down. So that's something that we learned the hard way. And now we just write down everything. Also especially the things we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't, if there's any in the high, we don't do fixed price on those items. So if the worst case, we pull the high items out and say those are all high risk.
Yeah, same with us. But a lot of the times we actually tell our customer that there will be the need for more budget when we reach that point. So he just knows up front, and he can then decide he takes the risk or not, but we're not going to take it. So that works if you're very close with the customer again. That does not work with the first time thing where you get like a book of specifications. Yeah, you can't do it then. Yeah, exactly.
That's the other good reason for doing this type of thing, is that you can park at the highest.
Yeah.
Jörg, just a comment on this when it comes to how many requirements you can specify up front and how much you leave to just fix as it goes. That is, to my experience, quite dependent on your relationship with the customer and previous relationship with the customer. If you can trust that this customer is smooth to work with, and then they can give you rather poor requirement specification, and you can start working from that, because you know that they're going to be smooth, they're going to understand your problems, and you can work on this together. If not, you need to have a better specification. We had times when we thought we had a customer that was smooth to work with, and you sort out everything as it goes, and then it turns out there's another project leader for this project, and it was from the first one, and it's a total different story. So we burnt ourselves a little bit there. Okay. But just the relationship with the customer comes in as a rather important part of this.
Yes, very much true. So we even have customers who are happy for us to come up with saying we found this and that out and we need more budget, because we just take care of it. So it's not always a question of having a fixed price, but we do need to have a fixed price, because otherwise people in Germany can't order. So there's no purchase order if you don't have a fixed price. They just cannot bring that through their management things. But if you've been working with a customer for 10 years, they know that you don't want to screw them, right? Yeah. So they know if you need more time or more money, it's just because of the thing that you're working on.
Well, you've also enumerated the reasons.
Yeah, and if you can tell them why and what. Exactly. If you have your good reasons for that, what can he do? He can say no, then he's got to do it himself. Nobody wants to do that, in my experience. So we don't have a lot of problems with that kind of overrunning budgets if there's a reason for it. If we just screw it up, we need to swallow it, of course. That's the way it is. Okay, so yeah, very quickly, the columns, we got our work packages, which are our quotes, so that we have a reference. We have these components again, the requirements numbers, description, short or long, depending on what it is that we do. We try to think about how to show our customer that we've done this thing up front, so helps with working towards the goal of like ticking the checkboxes and again sending the invoices. And we try to give it a risk, but this is really only 3 levels of risk, so it's not as elaborated as yours, for example. We don't do very much risk evaluation in that sense. But I know you got the calculation table, wasn't it yours?
You can do,
Yeah.
But generally, as requirements, we go 1 to 4, 1 to 5, 4 and 5. We don't do this.
Okay. So I
Pushing back into a package, which is
the important thing, I think, is to just think about it. Because if you don't even have the column, you don't think about it, and you might miss something that is really a big risk, and we don't want to miss the big things that we could stumble upon. Okay, so I was planning on running shorts, but I think we're way behind my time schedule, so I'm going to speed things up a bit. What do we do when we've written down everything? The price? Okay. Let's see. Seems about right. So not planning anything is a good way of like not knowing where you're standing and thus finally hitting the point where you're screwing up. So what we do then is we take the requirements, which should be fairly complete, and we try to translate them into the real tasks that need to be done to implement those features. We try to make them small, but not too small, so I would say they are like from a half day to perhaps 2 or 3 days. This is where we aim, not small and not much bigger. And when we have that, we try to like sort everything out and put those tasks again to those components so that we have some structure in our work packages. So we can give different work packages to different developers. So for example, developer 1 might work on component 1, which would be like one thing to implement. And this is where we try to arrive at the end of our planning phase. But of course, it heavily depends on what the thing is. If it's a huge thing, we will try to break it down. Yeah, that's what we try to achieve. And then we try to think about how to implement that, in which order. Because again, as a business owner, I'm interested in reaching points where I can say, we have finished something, take a look at it. If it's okay, I want to send you an invoice. That's my measurement of a successful project, of course. And that's why we try to do something like this. Half of the time, this doesn't work, so we have to come up with different ways. And for some of our customers, even this is difficult, because when we started the project, we don't know which hardware will be available when, for example. So we need to be like flexible in what we're working on. It needs to be responsive to whenever the hardware is available. Then we need to be quick. So we had one project recently where we had like 110 requirements. And those 110 requirements were 110 positions on the quote. So the guys in their purchasing department had to put like 110 positions on their order. But now we have the freedom of selecting when to implement what and when to like send the invoice for that. But that's the extreme case, I think. So mostly it's like we have our milestones, and they should be like 1 to 2 months if we can do that. And that works very well for us, and also very well for the customer, because if it takes much longer, chances are very high that we are like running into wrong directions, and we don't see that, because it takes like 3 months to come back to the customer and say, this is what we built, and everybody's been working on his thing and working and working and working, and after 3 months of time, we find out, that's not where we want it to be. So shorter iterations are are to be preferred in our experience.
So your milestones are always deliverables towards the customer, or can you deliver something really on paper or as a piece of software, or are it sometimes, let's say, some fake deliverables?
So the question was, what are our deliverables? Is it only software? Is it something else?
Yeah, especially the payment milestones. Is it something physical you deliver to the customer, or are it just on paper or an email, some documents or things like that?
I think whatever it is that was on our quote or on the purchase order. So if it was like coming up with the architecture or a concept which is only on paper, then this is a deliverable. If we say we need to have this configuration editor in place and it needs to work with like XML and database, then we will have to show him that it works, and then that's the deliverable. So it can be anything.
But we always tend to have, it's a thing. I kind of like to think of it as a jumping off point. So you could report at the start that there's something they can use.
You're tired today, are you, Richard?
Yes, I kind of like it to be a thing, an actual item that they can use. And one sort of judgment of it is that if you both end up hating each other, that they can eject you from the project, or you can eject them from the project, and they can carry on and employ somebody else with the project. It's not a tie-in, so it's that keeps it kind of pure. What the deliverables are then is something that they can use at that point in time, because it's very tempted to make milestones based on, we want our cash flow to be once a month, so we'll make monthly milestones, and they're not actually useful to people. So I like use. I like to do deliverables on use.
I think it's easiest if you have something to like show, like you said. This is the editor, you can click on it, it does save, no questions. It does work. Oh, it doesn't. So probably, ideally, it's something that you can just show a test case or verify in whatever way. Mostly it's software, obviously, because we're a software company. Yeah.
Now, in our experience, like with DQMH, it's like sometimes we even deliver the testers that maybe the customer cannot do much, but they're able to press some buttons and see like the individual parts, and that gives us feedback as to are we going on the right direction or not. So it's sometimes a very rough. I used to work with some people that felt uncomfortable with delivering that because they felt it was too rough. Right,
yeah.
But I find that we get a lot more. And sometimes when the customer is developing the hardware at the same time as you're developing the software, now you give them something where they can test the hardware with. So.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, we're having a hard time a lot of the times because we're working a lot with real-time and FPGA, and those are often not working until the FPGA software is very far in its advancement. So it's hard to test stuff before most of it is working. So
you could do like unit tests for the FPGA
running
on that stuff.
But some of the problems with FPGA is not really covered by unit testing. So
yeah, also you need
if you don't have it on the real hardware, then and this particular hardware, because we do also FPGA, then sometimes even if you have a hardware in your office, but it's not exactly the same hardware that customer will use. It could deploy and work here, and then you deploy on the final hardware, it gets timing issues, resources issues.
And that's why you want to do intermediate releases.
Yeah.
So you want to do a deployment, and even if they cannot.
But you are somehow blocked by the hardware that it's when you're waiting for a compact RIO, for example, for 4 weeks or something like that, then it might shift your milestone. Somehow.
Yeah, we have the same experience. Also with the hardware that's connected to it. Because sometimes our customers don't know themselves exactly the timing of communication protocols or something like that. So you just cannot finish it until you have the thing in front of you. So yeah, I mean, this is the real world. So you need to be agile, try to be agile and just react to that.
I think, just to pick up on something you just said then, I think it's quite important to identify customers' responsibilities as well. So making sure they're aware of when you need stuff, and why that's critical.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's easier for those customers that we work together with because they're in the project, in the team. But we do have a very nice project where we've been building a monitoring system for a production line which is welding the tanks of the Ariane 6 rocket. And of course we are like the tiniest of tiny wheels in this whole thing. So nobody gives an idea about whether we like their shifting of dates or not. So they just tell us, no, you're not coming tomorrow. I mean, you can come, but you can't use the production line, but next Wednesday. And they don't care if I like that date or not. So, I mean, I can just say, okay, I don't want to work with you again, which I obviously won't say. So that's just, again, real life. You need to deal with it, suck it up. So you can't put it on paper, everything. Okay, so another view of planning. This is a tool we're using. It's called Open Project. It's a web-based tool where we try to feed in our tasks, our work packages, whatever you want to call it, so that we get a nice representation of it. But I have to say we don't use it as much as I thought we would. So I'm not too sure about it because I'm going to show time tracking as well, which has been evolving a lot, the tool that we used in the last year. So I think we're going to be ditching this because it doesn't help us as much as we want to. So it's starting to become more work than it's a benefit to us. But I do like a good Gantt chart, I gotta say, because it reflects the real world, because there are just deadlines that we need to hit. So Agile is all nice and good, and we try to do it within small packages, but overall we need to appreciate the fact that we're gonna need to finish this project by whatever. So, and this is the representation for that. Burn down charts and stuff like that don't help with that. They are interesting, but they don't help with like seeing, okay, we should deliver here, and we're already here, but we only have 50%. So this is what I can see from that. If it's auto-generated, if I need to like fill in figures into some system, it's more work than it's of use, and that's why we're probably not continuing to use this tool. So, next thing. You have been talking to your customer, okay, but the next chance to blow everything is not to talk to your team. So for those customers that we work together with, we tend to like have our components, which I said should be like smallish things, like perhaps 2 weeks at most. And whenever somebody's starting on his next 2 week or 1 week package, we're gonna sit down together and take like 2 to 4 hours probably with the stakeholder, so the person who knows the most about the feature that they need, and talk it through in detail. Take some detailed notes, because this is the point in time when we're gonna start with the package. So this is the point in time when there's the most information available about that. And this is the point in time when the person doing it actually needs to know. So they get it very fresh into their head. And 1 to 2 weeks is just a time period that you can like process in your mind. You know, like, okay, today is Monday. By Friday next week, I should have made this and this and this and this. And this is something that you can comprehend in our experience. Maybe it's only my head, could be. But this seems to be working fairly nicely for us. So how does it look like? Again, very pragmatic, just sit down and talk. Maybe have a computer in front of you, maybe have a display, maybe project something. But I want to emphasize that this is not really formal. This is just, we need to talk about it and relay the information. So it could also be like this. You could even have like a good time while doing your work. So the important thing is to really talk about it, to think about it, to get your mind to focus on the thing that you need to do, and then start off doing it. So next thing. What is the next thing? Do not use best practices. Not at all. So I was planning on talking a lot about that because I was thinking that that would be interesting to you guys, but we only have 5 minutes left. So I'm going to browse through it a lot. I just want to say what we use and what we try to use and what we should use. So we have style guidelines, coding guidelines, written down a bunch of stuff, how we want our code to look like, and we try to live by that. So this helped very much also with subcontracting, not so much to tell people how to actually structure the software, but just how to make it look, how to make it blend into our software. So this helped a lot. So there is stuff about like colors, about VI icons, that's the screenshot that I show here, about like giving labels and sublabels to sequences and all that sort of things that you can browse through. It's, I don't know, 5 pages, perhaps it's not too much. So it's just the minimum set so that we just have something that looks fairly similar. This is working really well for us, so I'm adding to that from time to time. So I'd say 100%. Then, using Git and Git flow, which we've adopted fairly recently, which I like very much. Paul, again, has been talking about that, and I don't want to go into detail, but it helps us keep or introduce a new level of structure into our development or into our source code management processes. Very short, it means that you have different branches for different stages in the product development. Having a development branch for new features, you would make a new branch, finish a feature, merge it back. So we've been having very good experiences and results with that. So I'd say we've not been using it too long, so I'm going to give it 90%. But I think very much that we're going to keep using it. But in a very simple way. So we only have the development branch, we have our feature branches, and then we release from that. So I think the most simple version of like Git flow. This is my graphical Git client that you see here. You also see the branches like visualized. So I think that's a good thing. Then, who recognizes that? Okay. For those of you too lazy to raise your hands, this is the VI analyzer. We're using that, and I think not as good as we should, or as we could. We've been having a very interesting discussion yesterday. Alan, where is he? Yeah. About having VI analyzer run in the background continuously. What we're doing right now is we're having an automation system built into GitLab, our repository system, and it triggers a build server, and on this build server the code is checked out again and then tested automatically. But this is only after you check it in. So while it's nice to get an email telling you what you did wrong, I always ignore it. Manu, you always ignore it. Every customer ignores it, so that's not the way to go. So we tried to switch the slides. Okay, there you go. We tried to come up with a pre-commit hook so that it would fire up VI Analyzer when you try to commit source code into your source code control. But this is a tedious process because it takes so long. Tedious, I think is the word. So you're used to committing software and it just takes like, I don't know, 3 seconds because it's local. But if you need to fire up VI Analyzer, then wait till it runs the tests. It's just taking more time than I am ready to take, so I'm not that patient. So while it is nice, and I think technically it's a very nice solution, it's nothing that is in our workflow yet, so maybe someday. Unit testing, we tried to do that, but it's definitely not in our workflow yet. We've been talking with James a lot recently and the guys to try and get better, and automating it on the server side is one thing that we are actively working on. But this is something that we still need to give more love to. Automation, as I said, this is GitLab.com. This is our source code management system, and it does have its own continuous integration or continuous deployment system. So what you see here is these are events that were triggered by me pushing a new tag in my version control system. So then our build server in our office would check out the thing, execute the analyzer, execute the build specification, put the whole thing into a package, which is a zip archive in our case, upload it to our web server and generate a download link for customers on our wiki website. So this is working really nicely for us. I give it a 100% for those customers who download the finished packages. It's working flawlessly. And we try to do more with that, like unit testing, for example. So, the measure, the dimension of code reviews, what the fucks per minute. Love that picture. It's so true, isn't it? Yeah, the pain cries. So again, you can do that like yoga, like smooth, like chilled, not very formal. We have a timekeeper. We have somebody who tries to lead through the process, but nothing more than that. That's too bad, my time's up. So what do you do now? You want to drag me off the stage? Okay, I'm gonna run over for 1 minute. Joerg?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, are you reviewing all the code you're really doing?
No, not at all. We're very deliberate at taking our freedom to pick whatever we think is either important or interesting for the others in the team. So, but not all code.
Because we recently started as a kind of experiment, and for one of the customers to do a peer review of every change we do.
Okay.
You'll be surprised that it works pretty well. I mean, it's not like a review like here, it's a peer review. So basically, you create a branch for your new feature or a bug fix, and when you're ready, you just trigger the guy sitting next to you or other side of a room and say, hey, could you please review my changes? And if he agrees or she, then he or she is the one who really merged it into trunk. And although it takes longer, of course, it has two major benefits. First, you catch bugs on the early stage, which is obviously a good thing. But second thing, there is another person that really understands your code and can maintain your code and can do another bug fixing if the same customer calls again. So it's actually a very good thing for sharing knowledge and being sure that we have at least two people in the team who really know what this code do and why is it written like that.
When I was on the LabVIEW team, all of the LabVIEW source code had that same peer review, everything.
I gotta say, as a contractor, I find it hard to do that because I don't have customers who pay me for it. If they did, I would love to, because I think it's a good thing, yes. So please let me quickly show this, because I think this was the most interesting thing, at least from a business point of view, track and control the progress. So I cannot go into detail now, I'm sorry, but what we do is we track our time, we create projects and the components and the tasks in our time tracking software, and then we have on the fly like evaluation of where we're standing. And we're having weekly meetings internally where we discuss the progress of our projects, where we figure out when are the milestones, what do we need to do today so that we can send an invoice in 1 month's time and stuff like that. So I highly recommend that. This is the most important thing for me.
How long have we been doing that?
How long?
Let's give it the age test.
We've been doing this feature inside the time tracking thing is only there for 1 month, but we've been doing it for 3 years, I think. In one way or another. So this is perfect.
Really struggle to do.
Yeah. So my wife is an accountant. She's running the business side of things in our company, and every Monday we need to, what do you call that? Give rapport? Yeah. Is it the thing? So he's saying, yeah, you're laughing, but it's not funny. Yeah. No, because she said, you said last week that you're going to work on this and this and this. What did you do? And if I'm standing there and saying something else, she's asking why. So this is the most important thing in our business, truly. Alan.
My wife might come help me at some point in the future. She's never going to have that role because there's all the other stuff she wants me to do.
Yeah, it's a balance thing. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was the very high sophisticated Hampel self-development process, which is really only pragmatic thinking and what do you call that? Common sense thing, nothing else. Just doing it. Skip that. It's okay to have fun. Thank you.